We're moving on now to what is always one of my very favourite sessions at the PRovoke Global Summit. Every year for the past 4 years, we've run a competition with We Communications called the Young Changemakers. And we get submissions from all over the world and select 4 young women from underrepresented backgrounds who truly are the future leaders of the PR industry. I've spoken to them all. We did a great podcast, which we published last week in PRovoke, so do listen to that if you haven't already. And they're quite exceptional, and I know you're going to love hearing from them as agency leaders of the future. Please, can you welcome our 4 young changemakers to the stage? Welcome, ladies. It's great to see you all again. You all look fantastic.
Thank you for having us.
I'd love you to introduce yourselves, so I'm not speaking for you. So we'll go down the line, starting with Elsie. If that's all right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elsie, and I'm a digital transformation consultant, as well as an AI growth strategist. I've grown up between Lebanon, UAE, and Canada, and it's an honor to be here, to be chosen as one of the young changemakers amongst 3 incredible women that are driving change within the industry, and I'm excited for today's panel.
Thanks, Elsie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lívia. I'm from Brazil. I'm here to represent Latin America. I am the head of marketing at a communications agency that operates in 13 countries in Latin America. And I'm very glad to be here today with all of you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lívia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liyana Shirin. I represent the UK-Europe region as one of the young changemakers, and I am a group communications manager for a supply tech company called as Brambles. I am also, outside of my 6 o'clock, a Future Leader Shadow Board member for this wonderful organization called as Women in Banking in Finance in the UK. And in the last decade have been heavily focused in communications and employee engagement.
Hi everyone, my name is Kayla Marrero. I am an account executive at a communications agency in DC where we support public affairs clients. And outside of my 9 to 5, I am the social media lead for the PR Habitat, which is a fourth space for young professionals in the communication industry. We actually launched our website today, so super excited to be involved in that.
Thanks, everyone, for introducing yourselves. This initiative was set up to really give a platform and a voice to young women from around the world who are already kind of future leaders of the industry. Let's just kick off from there to set the tone. What kind of future do you want to shape for the comms industry? And we'll start at this time.
The future that I want to shape in the communication industry is to really have more women of color in leadership roles. I think growing up, I didn't really see a lot of leaders who looked like me. I actually didn't even know what public relations was. I only knew what journalism was. So really bridging the gap between young professionals in the industry. I also want to make sure that the industry is also inclusive. I think we always throw like acronyms like DEI, but really instead saying diversity, equity, inclusion to really make sure that we understand that it is important. It's not just an acronym, it's more, it is a collective, it's who we are as a community, so really reinforcing that in the industry.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And Liyana?
I think I look forward to a future where we no longer discuss topics like diversity and inclusion as a topic of issue, where it is part of the culture that we have, and we're joining hands to do incredible work in the PR and communications industry. So it reminds me of a quote that Sheryl Sandberg had said when she was the COO of Facebook, now Meta, where I'm paraphrasing, but she said something on the lines of, I look towards a future where there are no female leaders, but only leaders.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Liyana. Lívia?
Well, from where I come from, I believe my vision for the future and what I really expect to see is that our region, Latin America, is seen for its full potential. This is the first year that PRovoke Media and We Communications are having us present here, so I'm very grateful for this recognition because I feel that sometimes we are seen as a one single thing or a less superior kind of people. So I expect us to be seen for the full potential that we have, that I know we have, the cultural nuances that we have across all the countries that are part of the region. And of course, that more women from there are respected because still men have more credibility when it comes to Latin America too. So it's a mix between these two things.
Thanks, Livia, and congratulations on being our first ever Young Changemaker from
Thank you.
LATAM. Elsie, what kind of future do you want to contribute to building?
The type of future that I see when it comes to PR and communications is where PR and communications is seen as an engine of trust and value rather than a support function. And on top of that, I would like to see us integrating AI more so that way we can enhance our creativity and that way we can deliver more value where we have more personalization with precision.
Thanks, Elsie. We'll talk more about AI in a bit because I know you've all got firm views on that subject. Let's learn a little bit more about you all as people. Can you tell us something that's maybe not in your LinkedIn profile, that was a moment that really shaped your purpose and your understanding of what kind of leader you want to be? Let's start with you, Elsie.
My purpose is forged in duality. So I grew up between the Middle East and Canada, and one of the main drivers for me are my parents. They are immigrants who worked really hard to get to where they are today. They have shown me unwavering strength and resilience to make sure that you're adapting to new places without losing what your core identity is. And one of the most important things is to carry yourself with courage, integrity, and trust. And I believe that with everything that they've done, it has helped shape me as a person because I carry it with what I do. And it showcases that it's important to lean into discomfort and move with purpose, even when times feel uncertain or you don't know where the road is going.
Fantastic. And what has that journey taught you about leadership, do you think?
Oh, leadership, definitely fluidity. That is so important. Being adaptive, tapping into emotional intelligence, and knowing that you can still carry forward your values while adapting to the different places that you're in, learning from others as well, and basically giving back through your own traditions, your understanding, and it's important to build that connection. So this summit, the theme of it is relationship building, and it's so important to relate with others by knowing more about them, sharing more about yourself, and really understanding their root values, purpose, and where they see life heading as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Olivia, share a little bit about your story and what's given you purpose.
Yes, so I was born in Brazil, but I lived part of my life in Mexico, and I also studied here in the US during high school. I think this shaped me a lot, the part about living in Mexico, and I had also some experiences in Panama, in Costa Rica. It really showed me a lot about Latin America and what I was sharing before about these cultural nuances and different countries. We are a region that cannot be seen as one single thing. And also my experience here in the US, it was not completely good. I faced rejection during high school because of my accent, because where I come from. And I believe that being here today is reframing this experience. And being given this space is really healing this experience to me. And well, I come from Brazil. Brazil was recognized this year at Cannes as the most creative country in the world, which gives me such pride. And I really feel like we are coming to a place where we are really being seen for potential, all of our creativity. So it's been a journey and also a lot of inspirations in the way.
Thank you for sharing those experiences. What have you learned about leadership from your journey?
What I see as important in leadership is being very horizontal. So I believe in a leadership where everyone has space to communicate what they believe in, to share ideas, to really put and have a say in everything. So this is something that I take on in my current job, and that I feel like it's the best way to really create, especially in communication that really resonates with the audience, because if you have multiple perspectives, then you are able to create meaningful and deeper messages.
Okay. Thanks, Livia. Liyana, tell us a little bit about yourself and what's given you purpose.
So, fun fact, I started as a financial analyst before I pivoted into comms. And very quickly realized that along with enjoying crunching numbers, I enjoyed telling the story behind the numbers as well. So I looked for other parts of the businesses that were doing something similar, but also in the next year or so pivoted into a more client-facing role. And I realized that I enjoyed the aspect of bringing people together, making sure that they were engaged with the story just as much as a client was. And parallelly, with a client-facing role, I shadowed the head of marketing. So a decade back, we never had a PR and a comms department, as far as I remember. We were all packaged into the marketing function. But now you see that change of comms and PR having a seat at the table. So at that point in time, while I was managing dual responsibilities, I recognized that I was doing something right, but couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, but continued doing it as I moved on in my career. And I feel that was a defining moment for me, because I recognized that there is purpose in driving that story, there is purpose in telling that story, because not somebody else in that room wasn't. So I took that initiative to do so.
Thank you, Liyana. And what has that taught you about leadership as you've moved through your career?
I think leadership for me is an evolving concept, and it evolves as you grow in your career. Same with leadership style as well. So leadership for me back in university was setting up a student community, driving the membership from 4 to 250 members over the course of 1 year. Leadership for me when I was graduating from that university was to be the first female spokesperson for the student community to share the challenges that we had with the management board. Leadership in my first job in the corporate ladder was identifying that there was a gap in our early career talent onboarding and recognizing and setting up an engagement plan for it so that they were at ease and not having the same challenges like I did. Fast forward to a decade today, leadership for me is influencing upwards, making sure that the senior most professionals in the industry are held accountable so that the changes that they promised are being driven today.
I love that. Thank you very much. And Kayla, what about you? What's given you purpose from your journey?
Yes, so while I work in Washington, D.C., and now based in Maryland, I'm actually from Philadelphia. So I feel like a lot of the challenges that we face as a city is similar to Chicago, where people always think like negative about Philadelphia. They think about the gun violence, they think about the crime rate, when in reality there is so much positivity in Philadelphia. So when I was in high school, I always was drawn to telling the story, because when I would listen to the news, I would always hear about the negatives, and I really didn't want to listen to that all the time. So I did my due diligence, and I wrote an article about while diversity is embracing, while Philadelphia is embracing diversity, while there are different cultures that people might not know about, there's local businesses, but there is still some segregation, and there's some work that needs to be done. So I did my due diligence as a communicator and hold my city accountable. And then I also think personally the way the news told the story of my family. I went through a lot. My senior year of high school, my cousin passed away, and the way that they told the story wasn't accurate at all. It was a misprint. So I had to talk to the news outlet, like, this is the story. This is what my cousin's legacy should be. So when I was in college, I created a memorial scholarship. I raised $500. I was a broke college student, didn't have any money. And I wanted to give back. I did a scholarship that for someone who was impacted by gun violence. And because of that, that also translates to the work that I do outside of my workplace. So I'm also on a leadership board for a nonprofit who gives scholarships to individuals who may have been impacted by police brutality, who may have been impacted, who have family members impacted by police brutality. So while I have a day job, I do so much outside of my job because I know there is so much things that needs to be done, so I want to be a part of that change. And I think that also correlates to my leadership roles because while I believe that you don't always have to be the loudest person or the loudest voice in the room, it's important to listen. And I think a lot of individuals may not always listen to the people underneath, so when I lead in the PR habitat, I make sure that I'm listening to what my team needs. And then if I can be that resource, whether like we're eventing, we're creating social media strategy, I ensure that I am doing my part to make sure that I'm giving my team what they need, the space, while also making sure that we're growing together as a community.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us, Kayla. We've got a sense of these amazing young women now. Let's dig into something a little bit more provocative, because that's why we're here. What is the hardest truth about the PR industry that leaders still don't want to hear? And what's one awkward conversation that needs to be had? Livia, I'll start with you.
For me, the hardest truth is to tell companies, CMOs, that it's not about you, it's not about your brand, and you should not be communicating thinking about those two things. People want to hear what has to do with them. So what your brand can give them value, or what you're saying that can bring value to their lives. So making announcements, making new launch communications, this doesn't resonate, this isn't deep. People are looking for meaningful and deep communications. And I think this is hard to understand, especially, for example, us as agencies. We are hired to put their names in, well, everywhere. And when we tell them this truth, it's hard for them to accept it. So I think this is a valuable lesson that we should carry and really try and understand that your company, your name, will only be remembered if it touches something that it's deep into your audience. So, yeah.
Okay, and how does that go down when you talk to your clients and say it's not about you?
Well, some say I don't care. But I think with the right methodology and showing them the results, we are starting to have this shift. I think people, when talking, they understand this concept. But when it comes to spending money in a PR agency that it's not putting their name in the headline, it isn't that easy to accept or to understand. So it's something that we need to manage.
Thanks, Livia. Elsie, for you, what's the leaders still not want to hear, and what's the hard conversation that the industry needs to have?
I would say we speak so beautifully about inclusion. However, we have yet to implement it and relinquish that type of authority to people of different, diverse backgrounds. One of the quotes that I love so much, and I agree with, by Elda Shuker, who is the CEO of Omnicom Media Group in the MENA region. She said that we have to focus on redesigning the system. Else, if we have diversity without equity, it's merely symbolic. And I couldn't agree more. In terms of the uncomfortable conversations that we're supposed to have, I would say it's worth focusing on the more empowering conversations tied to AI, how it can enhance human creativity, and adopting it more towards complementing human ingenuity. So human ingenuity is the highest value commodity that we have. And it's so important to understand how to utilize these tools to enhance what we do, and that way we can deliver and scale at impact.
Okay, thanks, Elsie. Kayla, I'll come back to you.
Yes, I think one thing that I would say is understanding that access to education is not the same across the country. I feel like when it comes to hiring entry-level professionals, people will compare a resume from a PWI to the same resume as a HBCU, when in reality it's not the same. There's more resources and more organizations that you have at a PWI versus a HBCU, so really understanding that I think is really critical, but also understanding that like there are students who want to work. There are so many people, but there are just not enough opportunities. And then I think that also plays in a factor, the pay. I think while an internship is great, that sometimes students are not able to even intern there because they don't have enough like funding. The pay is not equate to like the rate of inflation, for example. So it's harder for students, in particular with diverse background, to even move to a new country when the pay isn't the same. I think when I was in college, I wanted to intern in New York City. I wanted to go to Chicago, but I just did not have enough money to do it. And I already had 2 jobs in college. And then I also had an internship. So I was juggling different things. So like understanding that while yes, like there might be a standard pay rate across the industry, that needs to change so then more entry-level professionals can actually feel like they can work without struggling, food insecurity and things like that. So really making that equitable.
I've got 2 follow-up questions to that. First is how can the industry pull out those students from historic backgrounders who maybe don't realise the opportunities that are here in comms? And secondly, what can employers do in this industry to make sure that everyone starts with equity in their career?
I feel like the first one is just like educating yourself. I feel like there, like in HR, like you go to these campuses and you try to recruit these students, but without like understanding the students, I think. Like, you know, for me, for example, my cousin went to Howard University and she didn't have the same resources that I had at Penn State. So one thing that she did is she brought professionals to come to Howard to then talk to the students, to tell them about different like opportunities. It's just like education is a really big thing, and even like having those partnerships with these institutions as well. And then what was the second question?
The second one was how can the industry do better at making sure when young people are starting their career, whatever their background, they're starting from a place of equity?
I think just having a conversation. I think when I was starting my first job. So when I was starting, I had a conversation with my manager. It was like, this is what I learned, and this is what I still don't know. So she made sure that she was helping bridge that gap, because there's so many things I didn't know. Like there's terms, like acronyms. It was hard to really digest, but also having grace, because I went to college in COVID, and I think a lot of people forget COVID was a thing. So just having grace for these entry-level professionals, because I had no idea how to talk to people. I taught that. My first 2 years were completely remote. So we have to also understand that there are circumstances that happened and that's still impacting these generations. So really taking the time to talk, have a conversation similar to what I'm doing right now, because it's not hard. You're hiring these people, why not have the conversation first versus assuming what they need or what they want?
Yeah, I think the full ramifications of what the lack of face-to-face education during COVID did to young people is yet to come out. I completely understand. Liyana, for you, what do leaders still not want to hear, and what a difficult conversation that we need to have?
Can I just start with saying I was very pleased to see that question when the outline came through, because it's been a topic of conversation that I've been having with my reverse mentor as well. And I still firmly believe there is a lot of performative DE&I, or performative diversity and inclusion. We use inclusion as a shield, and it goes back to a point that I believe it was JJ who made it in the CEO panel yesterday, that we use sustainability and inclusion as a shield to say, yes, my organization is very inclusive, very diverse, but at the same time, we don't recognize that it is diminishing, using the exact words that JJ used yesterday, and I absolutely believe that. If you're not acting on some of these thought processes that you're sharing with the industry, it has a reverse impact. And my reverse mentor and I were having a conversation of a very global agency that recently launched an early career talent program for their organization. And they were very loud about it on their socials, about the fact that this is to build the future of tomorrow's pipeline. And then I looked up at the lineup, and there was no student of color or people of color. Like, if you're making decisions, I think it is high time we make it right. So look at your organizations, have a reflection on, are these decisions being made internally? And if so, can you change it?
Thank you, Liyana. I'm interested in your reverse mentor. How does that work, and what do you think you've both learnt from that relationship?
So the reverse mentoring program that is driven by Taylor Bennett Foundation in the UK, which is an incredible organization that is, setting the foundations to make sure that diverse workplace is no longer secondary, but something that is at the forefront, along with CIPR. They have set an annual reverse mentoring program that I believe is now running for more than a couple of years now. And we are paired with senior industry leaders to understand what is it that they do in their day-to-day and how they are influencing change in their own organization. And for us at mid-career level professionals to then reflect back on some of our reflections when we started out on that journey, and how that's different in agency, how that's different in in-house, how that's different in varied parts of the industry. And I saw that my reverse mentor and I had a very similar career path, but her trajectory was very different as opposed to mine. And it could be because of varied reasons. It could be the fact that she had the opportunity to start her career in a very established firm because she was in the privileged environment to do so. And I perhaps did not do that, and I had to do the extra mile and do the extra effort to reach the same position as she was, where it was handed to her. And it was a very honest and candid conversation to recognize that, to acknowledge that. But at the same time, now that she is in a position where she's leading her organization, she brings in white papers that we discuss and submit that as, decisions that they need to drive in their organizations, and perhaps submit that as policies that they can then drive further up as well. So it's a reflection on both sides to acknowledge that change is required, but also at the same time to acknowledge, to Kayla's point, that we haven't grown in the same environments. The different generations that are coming through the workforce have different experiences that we need to acknowledge.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Liyana. Elsie's desperate to talk about AI. So let's move on to a conversation about AI. You're all obviously digital natives. What's your opinion on how AI is being used in comms? And can you give us some examples of what's working and where we still need to move forward faster in the industry? I'll start with you, Elsie.
Definitely. Okay, so right now with AI, a lot of us are working with intuition-based, and we're shifting now towards being intelligent-driven. And soon enough, with the way that AI is growing, is that it's going to end up becoming more self-optimized. One of the things that is so important is how do we integrate it further with our community, with our organization. And one of the key points that Susan Howe from Weber Shandwick has mentioned yesterday was that it is crucial to upskill our talent along the way. Partner up with necessary tech partners like Google to create the right tools to upskill people. And one of the most important things is, as you climb up with your work, it's important to bring your people along the way. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, I think it's crucial that we keep in mind the different age groups as well. We spoke a lot about, supporting the youth that is entering the workforce. How do we well equip them when it comes to AI and building their necessary skills? But I think it's also important to make sure that you're fostering the existing employees of all different backgrounds who are interested, excited to learn more about AI, to implement it in their work, so that way they don't feel like they're feeling left behind. You know, it's the artificial intelligence is growing pretty fast, and one of the most important things right now is to make sure that you are keeping up with the speed. Definitely keeping up with the speed. But what's important to keep in mind is that AI here is to support us, to complement us. When you know how to use it, it comes in as a tool that helps drive you further. So for example, rather than we're working on the nitty-gritty stuff that takes weeks to do, AI helps speed that up in a matter of minutes. Like for example, compared to traditional research approaches, when I was using predictive mapping and insight analysis for one of my clients, we were able to speed up our identification of customer pain points by 3 times the speed compared to what we were doing before. And that helped a lot because we were able to get the data that we needed and then focus on the more human aspect of things, which is storytelling, empathy, and understanding how we can add that human touch onto the work that we do.
Fantastic. And I'm interested, what are you excited about that's coming down the line that maybe isn't so mainstream as many of these tools are now? What's kind of, are you looking forward to playing with?
Oh, so many things actually, because I feel like with all the different types of apps and all the different types of tools of AI coming out, it makes you think about things that you haven't thought about before. Like there are apps like Notion, for example. It's your one-stop shop. Oh, I'm not the brand ambassador, just a note, but I really like Notion. It's your one-stop shop for all the necessary tools to make sure that you're able to carry things forward in a much faster, more organized way. When it comes to AI, we're seeing a rise of brands like L'Oreal, for example, co-creating with AI. We're seeing the rise of influencers that are generated by AI, and surprisingly, they have a phenomenal following base and earning revenue as well. On top of that, I'm excited to see how far things go in terms of the type of data that we're able to extract. Like with data warehousing right now, we're able to compartmentalize all the large information that comes through. And that's where the likes of Power BI allows us to visualize the information better. And from there, we're able to add more of our human touch to it. But one of the most important things to keep in mind throughout is to focus on using AI intelligently and not excessively.
Okay, thank you, Elsie. Wise words. Livia, what's your stance on how AI is being used in comms now and how you're using AI, and what are you really looking forward to exploring in the future?
I totally agree with Elsie that AI should be a complementary tool, right? So I don't think we should ever see it as a villain or something that will steal our jobs. I think it should be something that helps us really fasten up, speed up processes. So analyzing data, making researches for us, and all these kind of things that we already know that it helps a lot. But coming back to what I said before, I believe that our job is to get this information and transform it into something that really resonates. So gather all these points that it's giving to us and putting that human touch that will actually connect everything and build something that it's meaningful and that is deep. So I think it should always be seen as something that will help us create with meaning and with creativity that only a human can make. Because I don't think that something that it's artificial is able to connect to the sentiment of the audience, so like a human would do.
Yeah. And what AI developments or technology developments that are coming down the line are you looking forward to exploring?
I feel that using AI to build personalization is something that it's really interesting to me. So we move ahead of just, for example, changing demographics or ages, but really personalizing all messages that we get out into the world. because we're able with AI to do it in a way that's viable. We don't need a large set of people analyzing everything and making these changes. And we know that personalization is what truly works. So I feel like this is a great opportunity that we have right now to really get our messages to connect better each day with who we are trying to communicate with.
Thanks, Lyria. Liyana, how are you using AI?
We use AI quite aggressively at work, and it has been definitely a learning curve for all of our workforce at different stages. At the start, it was a case of understanding how the data is being processed at the back end, and also understanding from Microsoft, we use Copilot, on what the policies are to retain the data and how that is navigated. But as we progressed through that map, it became a case of identifying what are the strong suits of the different AI platforms, and for AI, in our case, Copilot. We identified from a comm standpoint that it was more of a case of divvying up the work. So some of the work where we do analysis, data research, and also identifying what are some of the research papers that we need to read in order to write or craft the right kind of comms plans, was something that we divvied up with Copilot. So Copilot essentially acted as another colleague in the team who was taking on some of these efforts while the writing itself was done by the people on the team. And we felt that division of work was really useful in order to manage the time, but also to deliver some really strong results for our internal clients. But that being said, having listened to some incredible conversations about AI in the last day, and also having the opportunity to talk to some of these leaders and also some of the students who are attending the summit, I recognize that our students are increasingly conscious about how businesses perceive AI and how they will then mark their roles in the world or in the industry, which is where we need to then recognize the fact that we need to set up certain workflows to help them ease into that role. Something that we do internally, and I'm pretty sure many of you do as well, where we have knowledge sharing sessions, and we recognize senior leaders in our company would be better suited to lead on topics like consulting, management, stakeholder management / relationships. But we recognize the younger generation and the younger workforce is better fit to talk about AI, and we get them to lead those sessions because we identify that different generations have their own strong suits. So I think it's high time we, tend to that culture.
Okay, and what are you excited about in terms of the possibilities of AI coming down the line?
Particularly about agentic AI. And I found the conversation yesterday around managing crisis comms on agentic AI quite interesting. And something that Shannon raised in that discussion was the fact that both the rise of AI and the internal growth of our employees go hand in hand. And I strongly believe that. And agentic AI has many opportunities that it can provide us, but particularly in corporate communications, from my standpoint, it makes our jobs perhaps a lot more easier if we want to host focus groups or understand what our people are trying to tell. And if we can get agentic AI to build those user buckets or profiles to give us what our audience would think when we go live with a particular communication plan, I think that is a massive +1 for me.
Fantastic. And Kayla, what about you? What's your view on how the comms industry is using AI at the moment?
Yes. Well, I agree with everyone in this panel, and then everyone at this summit who's been talking about AI. I think the one way that we've been using AI in the public affairs landscape is really understanding how certain legislation may impact our clients. I think with the evolving landscape, it's always changing. Every single day there's a new announcement, so really understanding how does it impact different stakeholders has been really pivotal when creating these briefing documents to our clients, or even understanding how we should change our messaging a little bit. And then even with new business development, understanding on what our audience cares about. We just adapted a new tool at my agency where we can look up to certain audiences and then what they believe in. And the data is refreshed, I think, about twice daily. So it really informs our strategy, knowing, okay, this particular group cares about X, Y, and Z, and then we should reflect that in our messaging or even our campaigns. So that's been really informative to understanding how certain, like again, legislation and things like that impacts our different stakeholders.
Fantastic. Well, I know when we were having our breakfast together yesterday morning, there was some chat about bias and ethics around AI as well. So do you have a view on that?
I think like how the presentation before this was saying that AI reflects the world, so it reflects the world's bias. So I think that's something that I'm actually looking forward to, the change, seeing that how AI just doesn't have any biases, or just like, you know, the evolution of that. I think that is something that like I hope changes, or even when AI stops agreeing with me. I sometimes ask AI to play a devil's advocate when I give it messaging. I'm like, act like my client, like this is wrong, like tell me what I should change, and then just really pushing it, continuing to see, okay, like can you just stop saying like I agree, like let's, you know, like have a conversation, like let's really involve this.
Fantastic. Did you have an addition to that, Liyana?
I think there's bias in data. And in our breakfast yesterday, there was a recommendation that I made, and if you haven't seen it already, there is a documentary on Netflix called as Coded Bias. And it talks about how algorithm has systematically shown bias in data when it comes to even, you know, things like reviewing CVs through the ATS system that many organizations use. And ATS is educated by CVs that have come through historically for a particular role. But historically, perhaps that role was taken by straight white men. So ATS has been educated to say that, okay, maybe a woman is not fit for that role because I'm not educated in that area or that data point. So highly recommend the documentary. This is one example from it, where it talks about the fact that the data that we have collected historically has bias in it. And we are humans at the end of the day. We will have bias. And at some point in time, over the last couple of years, these data points were collected by humans as well. But over the course of the next few years, I think we owe it to all of us to sit down and review that data and to identify where is it that we see these bias, and goes back to the human element that Elsie was talking about, that we sit down and say that, yes, this is wrong and we need to set this straight.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. I could speak to you all for hours, but we have only got, miraculously, only a few minutes left. Closing reflections from you all, two things. What gives you hope about where the industry is heading? And what's one thing you want the leaders in the room today to take away from hearing you guys? Elsie?
Okay, I would say what gives me hope is the desire for future purpose, as well as radical authenticity. And one thing I would say I'd like all of you to take away is make sure to transform the way that you lead. Know when to step back and allow other people with diverse communities have that strategic power to influence the decision-making power within the company. So that way your DEI is not merely a representation, but it's actually implemented. And I would also say, when it comes to mentorship, make sure to sponsor your mentees. So other than mentoring them, make sure to challenge them, understand what drives them further, and make sure to know that their success should be part of your vision.
Thank you very much, Elsie. Livia?
What gives me hope? Well, today, this event, we being here, it gives me hope that we are really looking to a better place, a better moment for all of us. And I think one thing that it's valuable that we are already doing right now, but that leaders could also consider, is really talking to Gen Z, to talking to Latin people, people from, well, all over, without coming without a preconception of what we have to say. So, for example, for Gen Z, I was talking the other day with a client, and he told me he wanted to target Gen Z, and I was like, okay, the spectrum is 13 years old, and I who have a house and I pay my bills, so you have to choose. So I believe like really hearing, listening, and understanding what there is to say instead of just going to talk with a preconception about it.
Thank you so much. And Liyana?
Agree with what Elsie and Livia shared. I think the workforce that's coming in today gives me a lot of hope. There's a lot of learnings that we can take from them as much as we give them. So I would, say that there is hope in tomorrow's communicators coming through. One thing that I would love some of the senior leaders to do in this room as they take away some of these conversations to their own organization is, if you don't have already set up a mentoring program or set up a reverse mentoring program, perhaps even set up a shadow board in your organization if you don't have that already. And if you need ideas, please, I would love to share those.
Thank you very much. And Kayla?
Yes, I agree with everyone. I think the younger generation gives me hope because as part of Gen Z, we're very vocal. We challenge brands and companies to put their money where the words are. So really embracing that and enforcing that and then continuing to be outspoken as a generation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we haven't got any time for questions, but I just wanted to say thank you again to the whole We Communications team and Melissa Wagner-Zorkin for championing the Young Changemakers for the past 4 years. We really appreciate it. And I think you all agree, future's in safe hands. Thank you all so much, ladies. Thank you. Amazing. Well done.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Young Changemakers.